thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. This marks my 50th year as a professional writer and still going strong, and that's thanks to you guys. So I'm very, very grateful. And yeah, exactly. And I grew up with that generation of writers who came before me, writing Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and Star Trek. I noticed they were the same guys writing the books and short stories I was reading. Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, Ted Sturgeon. You know, that was really remarkable. And they mentored me and got me where I am. So we have a history in science fiction of mentoring the next generation. And it's a wonderful, wonderful tradition. Let's see. Okay, let's stay smartly. Okie doke. So, I'm gonna round it up to 6. So I think we'll start now. So I'm Mark Zickery, writer, producer, director with my wife Elaine, and creator of Space Command, which is the new show that we're shooting, starring Doug Jones, Bob Picardo, Mira Furlan, Bill Mumy, Nichelle Nichols, Bruce Boxleitner, Armin Shimmerman, on and on. And so we'll talk about all of this stuff now. Now, many of you, of course, know that Doug is a master of disguise. No, sorry. But Doug actually, when you work with very famous and very successful actors, often they cannot be there on the day because they are shooting a show like Starfleet Academy, or they're off and away in in Kathmandu or whatever. So, but they did send a few videos that we can share with you. And then we'll talk about this wonderful project, and I'll introduce the people on the panel who are part of our performing team and our production team and so forth. So let's see if I can do this. Here we go. Let's start with...
Hey everybody, it's Robert Picardo, and I'm sorry I can't be with you at the Los Angeles ComicCon for the Space Command panel today. I'm up in Toronto shooting season 2 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Season 1 will premiere in early 2026 on Paramount Plus. Be there. People ask me, Bob, what is it? So much science fiction. Star Trek Voyager, Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe, Space Command Redemption, Star Trek Starfleet Academy, Space Command The Solar Wars. Why are you in so much science fiction? And today, I am finally able to answer that question. I don't know. Glad I could clear that up. Have a great day. EMH out.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Bubba. There we go. Great. And I'll show you what Doug sent and what Ethan McDowell, one of our other stars, sent. Yes, and I'll talk into the microphone. Thank you. Thank you. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Mark Scott Zickery, and I have written for many, many shows that you may have seen: Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Sliders, Smurfs, He-Man, Super Friends, Real Ghostbusters, Friday the 13th, the series, on and on and on. Basically everything you've ever watched, I wrote. And you're very welcome. Actually, one of the panels I suggested to this convention that they didn't say yes to was a panel called Thank You for My Childhood. And but recently I decided, I run a roundtable of writers and directors and producers and actors that I think all the people here are on the panel are part of, and you can be too, that meets every Thursday. And I started hearing about crowdfunding, and rather than having the networks and the studios screw up a show, as they often do, I wanted to do something that was inspiring, like Star Trek had inspired me when I was a kid. And because I met Nichelle Nichols when the show was on the air, she was very kind to me. We ended up 50 years later casting her in Space Command, which was a dream come true. And, but it was inspiring. People forget that Star Trek, the original Star Trek, was done during the Vietnam War, during the cities burning, the riots, all sorts of stuff going wrong. But Gene Roddenberry had the wisdom to say we can do better, we can create a future worth living in if we come together, if we are not ruled by fear and hatred and division. And so I wanted to do something that was in that tradition because I strongly believe in it. That has piloted my life. And so I reached out to my audience, and via crowdfunding campaigns and selling investment shares for $7,500 each, I raised the $4 million that opened our studio. We have 3 sound stages full of spaceships and aliens and giant robots. And we're shooting the 12-hour season of Space Command. We're now shooting hours 7 and 8, and we're in post-production on hours 5 and 6. The first 2 hours are running on Tubi and Google Play and Amazon Prime and all around the world, and you can see them. And And we're almost finished with the box set of the first 6 hours of the first half of season 1. So that'll be by Christmas, I think. And then we're shooting my wife's feature, and we're shooting 5 pilots that we're creating with friends of mine who created The Expanse and Farscape and many other shows that you've also probably enjoyed one way or another. So let me play what Doug Jones sent. He's one of our lead actors, as is Bob Picardo.
Well, hey everyone there at Los Angeles ComicCon. Doug Jones here, and I'm sorry I can't join the Space Command panel there today because I'm at a different convention somewhere else in the country, and but I wish I could be there to tell you how much I have enjoyed being a part of the Space Command family for a lot of years now, since the very first installment, and looking forward to my return as Dor Nevin in the next installment as they continue filming. So enjoy, and please give Mark and Elaine Zachary some hugs for me there, would you? Everybody in the audience, go, oh, from Dougie, okay? Love you all. Mama, God bless.
Doug is great. Doug is great. And yeah, and so this is Jacob Charlo, who is one of our actors in Space Command and an investor, actually, and a wonderful man. This is Sage Dela Cruz, who's also one of our actors. And David Bartlett, he's a producer and an actor and the breath mentor. What else? What else?
On this, visual effects producer of 1,850 visual effects. I'll talk about that in a minute. And sound design.
Yeah.
And build a lot of sets and stuff.
There you go. Yay. And Adam Sartain, who's one of our actors and also another Space Command investor and and so forth.
And an associate producer and assistant producer.
Yes, on Space Command. There we go. Okay. And then Steve Huff is our creature performer, fight choreographer, runs the physical studio. Anything else? Actor as well.
Actor, producer.
Oh, move that closer to your so-called mouth.
Actor, producer, stunt coordinator.
Great. Yay. And over there, the eminence is Howard Benjamin, and another one of our actors, and also our sound guy. Yep. So there you go. Yay. And a producer on Space Command. So, and also Vince over there is one of our VFX guys who's wonderful. So he's the one waving.
Yeah, he is.
Yay, Vince. Great.
Vince is
Glazer.
my best friend.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, the final video we have, which came earlier today. Ethan McDowell, I'll tell you a little bit about him. He's our star in Space Command. He plays Captain Jack Kemmer. And when I was raising the initial money for Space Command, because Kickstarter campaigns frequently have where you can pledge something and get like a little walk-on or maybe one line. But because the world was financing this show, I thought, well, why don't we have... I remember the talent search for Scarlett O'Hara on Gone with the Wind back in 1939. And so I thought, well, why don't we have a worldwide talent search where anyone in the world can download the audition scenes and be up for 2 of the leads in the show? Okay? Pretty crazy. For Captain Kemmer and Cadet Bradbury. So we got 7,000 inquiries, 1,200 video auditions, and we ultimately boiled it down to about 9 actors that we hired, including Ethan McDowell, who at the time was unknown. He was a guy in Wyoming. Now, of course, he's been on many, many shows, and so I'll play his little video he sent to us today.
Hello everybody, I'm Ethan McDowell, and I play the character Jack Kemmer through the rising ranks of this epic sci-fi adventure. Space Command is a very special experience because it's been the longest lasting creative endeavor of my life. I once was a young, hopeful actor with just a lucky audition tape who was hand-plucked by Mark and Elaine Zickery from a worldwide talent search back in 2013, and I've been a part of this wonderful creative team ever since. From outer space through The Walking Dead.
Clear! Clear!
It's all clear, Carl.
Stay, look around for a bit, so we don't miss nothing.
I've chased Miss Marvel.
The wrong people.
Kids, Agent Barry, we need to lock the city down and get them in now before anyone else gets hurt.
And discovered what made the Doom Patrol tick.
Quite a few transfers in such a short period of time. It's not normal. Seems you've struggled with normalcy your entire life.
I've faced the first righteous gemstone back in the Civil War.
Would you like to have final consultations with your Confederates, Minister?
Oh, I don't think so. Seems like bad timing.
Well, I think maybe you should.
Yes, sir.
and stumbled across those who go bump in the night in Take For Me.
Pretty babes in the wood.
But aboard the Paladin with my Space Command crew will always be a home away from home for me. With the kindness of Kickstarter and unstoppable fortitude, Mark and Elaine have built a welcoming, creative family of cast and crew members who all believe in the power of good storytelling. This unique journey has allowed not only our characters to grow, but to literally age into the stories as they span across the years of the franchise lineage. We literally could not be making this show without you. The fans, the friends, and family, from shareholders to sci-fi enthusiasts. Space Command Studios is a fully operational production house that not only has 3 handcrafted sound stages, but also open arms for anyone interested in joining the Space Command family. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for your ongoing interest and support in our Space Command journey. Welcome aboard, and have a great con, everybody.
Yay, 2 cheers. That's really lovely of him. So, and I'll put the logo back. And we have a few scenes that we can show you, but I also want our actors and other team to talk. So, and again, as I said earlier, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hands. Because I recently wrote a book called Greenlighting Yourself, because when I started in television in my early 20s, the only game in town was the studios and the networks. If you wanted to reach millions of people, you needed them, and it also cost millions of dollars to make anything. And you had to shoot on 35 millimeter. It was 2 days before we even saw the dailies. So, you didn't know if you got the shot. There was no video playback when I started. And now, of course, it's a completely different ballgame with, digital filmmaking and all of those things, and our audience literally financing our show. Now, the ultimate goal is to, with the Showrunners Network, which is a project of 1 feature and 6 series that we're creating once we finish season 1 of Space Command, the goal is to ultimately partner with the streamers and the studios and the networks, but not where they decide what gets made. It's where they distribute, they publicize, because it costs over $20 million to promote a show just so the audience knows it exists. But we're taking the power in the hands of the creatives, in the writers, the actors, the directors, etc. So let me start with you, Jacob. Is there anything that stands out in terms of your being part of this crazy journey?
Let's see. Well, sorry, I have a deep voice. I'm military. So basically, when I joined the Space Command crew, I was working on several different projects, and I wind up getting a friend of mine sending a photo to Mark, which was, of all places, off Facebook. So, and I wind up working with a guy named Paradox before Steve came in, and I was doing Krav Maga, instructor at the time, and former military. So,
and if you can't hear him, just tell him to speak into the mic. Just
okay.
Shout out.
You might get here.
You.
Okay, ready? No. Okay. So yes, so when I did that, I went on set, and it was the first set I've ever been on. I mean, I've worked on Deadliest Warrior, Little Fockers, and a lot of times they tell you can't speak to certain actors and stuff like that, even though you sometimes are part of the main cast. But to make a long story short, over here was different. And I was like, you know what, I've never experienced a set like this before, but it felt like camaraderie, it felt like family, it felt like military again. So that's why I was like, you know what, if I could invest in this, I would do it. That was just the thought in my mind. Not realizing that after we filmed Space Command Redemption, Mark told me about, hey, you know what? You can buy into some of the shares with Space Command. I was like, you know what? Done. I've never experienced the passion before. I mean, above money and all else, I never experienced the passion of someone that's like, hey, you know what? Let's make a film, but at the same time, you have some of the main characters are like, hey, you know what? I don't care what time it is. I want to help those people that are, maybe background or whatever it may be. And I enjoy that so much. Because, I mean, like I said, even though with forgiveness, let's say, for instance, I was in forgiveness, but I was helping out with the crew and everything. And then lo and behold, Ethan comes back, and he's like, hey, he's reading a script off of, to somebody else, trying to help them with their lines. And so I'm like, you know what? This is what I call a family.
Yeah. It's a family like the Mansons or the Borgias, and but
Exactly.
really that camaraderie. But the lovely thing is, see, the big thing about this is you guys who are watching the shows that we make, you're not aware of the wonderful shows that the studios didn't greenlight. I mean, I came up with a whole generation of showrunners, Ron Moore, Brandon Braga, on and on and on and on. A lot of them read a book. When I was in my early 20s, I wrote a book called The Twilight Zone Companion. And a lot of teenagers read that book and decided to become showrunners. And so there's a whole generation of showrunners who were inspired by that book, just like I was inspired by Star Trek. And so many of them, you never got to see their best shows. We got to read their pilots or maybe even see their pilots. You know, there's a guy I worked with on 2 series. I worked with him on Beauty and the Beast, the Ron Perlman one, and on the new Twilight Zone when they brought it back in the 80s. And he wrote a pilot that was about a group of young people jumping from parallel Earth to parallel Earth. Now that may sound familiar to you. It sounds like Sliders, which I was a producer on and a writer. But no, it was actually a pilot called Doorways that was made the same year, and they didn't greenlight it, even though they ordered scripts. And he was so pissed off, this writer, that he went back to New Mexico and he said, I am done with television. And he wrote a series of books that were so big they could never be made into a TV show, and that was George R.R. Martin. So Game of Thrones came from all of that. But Ron Moore recently was on an overall deal at Sony. 5 years, they greenlit nothing. Ron Moore is one of the geniuses of television with For All Mankind and Battlestar Galactica. 5 years of his creative career lost. And the same with many of my friends who are showrunners. So my idea was, if the audience, and by the way, when we talk about this, investment shares and all that stuff, you get a percentage of my producer's net royalties. We've actually started sending out profit checks. So, it's not like it's a one-way street and I'm driving a Rolls Royce and smoking, Cuban cigars or something. But it's a two-way street. But it's not a sales pitch. If you do have an aunt who is very wealthy and you can get power of attorney, please come to us after the panel. But also, see, the lovely thing is, our original cast on Space Command was Robert Picardo, Doug Jones, Mira Furlan, Bill Mumy, whom I worked with on Babylon 5, and Ethan McDowell. Now, even Ethan was unknown, but let's just talk about those 4 actors. Could I have gotten them approved as leads on a series with any of the networks? No. This is before Doug did Star Trek Discovery. And they would have said, well, who are these people? We don't want any of them. And yeah, Doug had already done Pan's Labyrinth. He'd done many of the great films. He was a legend and a genius, and I knew that. But Harlan Ellison, who was one of the great Star Trek writers, he once said something that I thought was very, very true, which is, you can get around arrogance and you can get around stupidity, but you cannot get around arrogant stupidity. So that's what the Hollywood is. But the point is, I can cast whoever I want. I can, Jacob, Sage, it's like, or alternatively, I'll also call friends of mine who are on shows. I just met Kristen Ritter a few minutes ago, and we're going to be talking about if there might be something for us to do together. It's like, these people are so talented, and it's great to be able to just have total freedom. There's no one above me and my wife on the food chain, so we don't have to get approval. We approve ourselves. We approve of ourselves. So, Sage, do you want to maybe talk a moment about how you got into this project and so forth?
Would love to. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here at LA ComicCon. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I met Mark first, as a little background. Back in 2019, it was my senior year of high school, and my play director decided to do the movie Alien as a stage play. It had never been done before, and it was a crazy idea, putting it lightly, but we managed to pull it off somehow. We made our set pieces out of recycled items. We collected toys and trash and foam and all types of things, and made a xenomorph and a motherboard and all that other stuff.
Yes. And the space jockey
so
and the
on
space
and so
suits.
forth.
It was phenomenal.
So I played Ripley in Alien the Play, and it was an amazing experience. It ended up going viral, and we gained recognition from Ridley Scott himself. He ended up sending us a bunch of, not a bunch, but I think it was like $5K to give us more equipment and, up our production. And it was also attended by Sigourney Weaver herself. I did a third night encore, and she watched me play Ripley for almost 2 whole hours.
Right. And this is in New Jersey. So,
Yes.
you know, it wasn't like it was in Westwood or something, you know.
No. This
It's a
is
schlep.
humble New Jersey. We had no funding. There was not a theater department or even anything like that. I actually see a lot of comments about that online. We had no money. We sold cupcakes and collected trash to make this happen.
Yeah.
And somehow Mark got word of it,
Yes.
and he flew all the way from Hollywood to little old New Jersey
Yeah.
to see our play.
Well, and it wasn't even, I mean, I love Alien, but the reason I actually did it was because I knew that you were going to be in the sort of media spotlight for 15 minutes of fame, and you'd get all these promises from Hollywood, and then it would, like, you know, like Hollywood does, they'd break people's hearts. And so I thought, I'll fly out for the day, and I'll hang out with the kids, and I'll tell them how it really works, and I'll say, you know, I can be a sounding board, or I'm happy to be of support to you guys. And 6 years later, you contacted me, and she's out here now, and we've cast her in Space Command, and you know, and the adventure continues, huh?
I never forgot what Mark said to me that day. Just explaining that there are good people in the industry that actually want to just make things and don't want to take advantage of you.
Right.
And I held that dear. I didn't contact him for 6 whole years, but once I made my way to LA, I sent him an email, and within 10 minutes he called me back and he said, "Of course I remember you." And the rest is history. Now I'm on Space Command, and it's totally a dream.
Yeah,
So.
and it's great, and it's wonderful because, again, television and film have always been magical to me. And when the original Star Trek aired and I met Nichelle Nichols when the show was on, it was like passing through the mirror, like Alice through the looking glass. It was magic. And when I went on that set, I was there for the last episode of Star Trek ever filmed, Turnabout Intruder. And I said to my wife, we were watching the episode recently, and I said, if that camera at that shot pulled back 5 feet, I would be standing to the left of the camera. And it was 10 years old. And so that amazing kindness of people and the fact that it's still magical. I go on my sets today, it's as magical as when I was sitting in the captain's chair and standing on the transporter and all that stuff on the original set. You know, and so I don't, but also Harlan Ellison was one of my very good mentors and friends, as was Ted Sturgeon and Ray Bradbury. And, but Harlan said, there's a great story that Harlan told. He wrote City on the Edge of Forever, which was one of the great Star Trek episodes, and he wrote many other things that were wonderful. And one time, one of his friend writers, when Star Trek was originally on the air, one of his friends came to him laughing, and he was saying, "I just went in and pitched to Star Trek, and I pitched them he pitched them Flight of the Phoenix, and they didn't recognize that it was a movie that he was ripping off, and they bought it." And it's not a bad episode. It's called Galileo 7, but it's not City on the Edge of Forever. And Harlan said to this writer, "You cheated not only them, but yourself, because you had an opportunity to take something from your heart, something no one had ever seen before, something that was true and profound and moving and could change the world, and you frittered it away. You wasted it just by conning them." And I remembered that story and held it very close to my heart. So whenever I would go in, when I pitched to Star Trek and DS9 and everything I've done my whole career, I always look for something that has never been done before, that comes directly from my heart, that's a profound truth. So when I came up with Far Beyond the Stars on Deep Space Nine, it was like, okay, this is an opportunity to do something deeply truthful and fresh. And that's what we're doing now with Space Command. That's what I've done my whole career. And so, but I was taught by the best. There's also, I'll tell you briefly, a story from Star Trek that almost nobody knows. There's a great episode of Star Trek called Amok Time, where Spock gets the mating fever because he's a Vulcan, and stuff happens. And Theodore Sturgeon wrote that. He was one of the great science fiction writers. And when I got to be friends with him when I was in my early 20s, Ted told me that he never pulled rank as a writer. But they showed him the rough cut of that episode, and they had taken out the line that was his reason for writing the entire script. And it's a point where he says to one of the other Vulcans, "You'll find that having is not nearly as sweet as wanting." You know, it's this great line. And when he saw that they'd cut it out, he said, "That's the one time I pulled rank, and I insisted they put the line back in," and they did. So that was, you know, cool stuff. So okay, so now we get to David Bartlett, Man Among Men, and so what's made this fun for you?
I started Star Trek as a 10-year-old and was very taken by it. I saw it first run on TV, and I also I visited my grandmother in a nursing home and was captivated by a TV show that was on with this ship that opened up slowly, and a little ship that got sucked inside, and I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And I'm watching This Is Lost in Space. Mm-hmm. So I also saw Twilight Zone, and I saw the Night Gallery episodes, and these were shows that I'm blank. The other one I saw, I'll think of it. Anyway, these are all the shows that I was steeped in when I was a kid, before I could really do anything else, because we didn't have any electronics of any kind, of course, and I'd ride my bike places and I would watch these shows. So to think that years later I could work with Mark, who worked on some of the later shows, and on a science fiction project, I jumped a lot, okay? When I was 21, I moved to LA. I got on some very big films right away. I worked at Roger Corman's New World Studios with James Cameron when he was a production designer, and his name was Jim. And which I see him once in a while. I say, Jim, and he goes, oh, and I go, New World, and he goes, oh, New World. And that's our relationship now. But I then worked into doing sound effects editing, and I worked on Pulp Fiction and Speed and Total Recall and Predator 2 and a lot of Tremors and a lot of other stuff, a lot of sci-fi, a lot of action films. And I did that for a long time. Then I started doing my own films independently, and now I have 85 Film Festival awards and 2 Emmy nominations. I'm a Television Academy member in the Producers Peer Group. And somewhere along the line there, a friend of mine introduced me to The Table. The Table is this group that Mark and Elaine started, which I was in 31 years ago now.
Wow.
And this is...
we'll have to shut it down.
Yeah, it's time.
No,
too much dust. No, it's thriving, frankly. We survived COVID and we're back and it's fine. And this is open to anyone who's an artist of any kind in any field. Writers, directors, producers.
In film, TV, and books.
There's someone who's does calligraphy. She's a member. And it's like anyone that wants to, musicians, and you can come. It's every Thursday except for Thanksgiving and Christmas. If you're interested in joining, you're welcome to. You have to come by invitation. This is the invitation. Adam is the one to get the information from, and I run the Table email, which there are 2,000 members of, and you can tap into that for your own projects and things later too if you come to a meeting. Anyway, that's the Table pitch.
Yeah,
so,
and we meet via Zoom and in person. So
Right.
via Zoom, it's anywhere in the world. And we have 3,000 members, and it's every Thursday. I created over 30 years ago because I thought Hollywood was needlessly cruel, rude, corrosive, evil, in how it behaved. And I wanted to create Hollywood the way I wanted it to be, which was kind, welcoming, treating everyone with equal respect, whether they were an Oscar winner or just off the boat. And it's thrived, and now we meet every Thursday. So you guys are all invited, and except them. And
I can be better. I can be better.
Yeah.
So,
but he has that effect on people. Go ahead, please.
You were talking. So I ran into Space Command through The Table, and his brother was building sets, and I volunteered to build sets one day, and I just gravitated into it, and I ended up being a producer and a visual effects producer. To give you an idea of what it was like, there are, in a heavy Star Trek episode of an hour, there's 500 visual effects. So 2 hours of that is 1,000. We had 1,850 on Space Command.
Yeah, that's the first 2 hours.
Star Wars, the first Star Wars episode 4, 250 visual effects shots in the whole film. So there's a little example of what that was like. And Vince did quite a few of them, which was awesome. We love to have people come and participate. I don't know how many people have come and never worked on a film set, and now my assistant was in film school, and she's the producer now. She's the line producer, produces all the shoots now.
Yep.
And I was able to step off to the side and start other things as well because of that. So there's all this opportunity there for you. So anyway, one thing that's fun about this project is that it's a very unusual concept where you've got this combination of retro and modern. The techniques that are being done are very modern. We're not into AI, but other than that, all the sound editing, all the cameras, everything like that is current, state-of-the-art we're using. Yeah. The concepts are, how can we use sets from other movies on the current sets? So Ray Bradbury did that. He was able
Rod
to...
Serling.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
Rod Serling did that.
On
Rod
Twilight
Serling,
Zone.
he worked at MGM on the Twilight Zone. And he wanted all these sets for these shows. They're like, we don't have any money for any of that. So he's like, well, what can we do? So, well, we've got all these sets in the warehouse, the MGM warehouse, okay? The biggest movie studio in the world. And there are all these sets. So he went through them and combed through the sets, and he picked and chose all the sets he got for free, and he wrote episodes around that. So Mark's been collecting set pieces with all of our help, willingly or no, from all over the world. Yes. And there's a large amount of sets now, and he just goes through and says, oh, this would be great for an episode. He'll write an entire episode around a piece of a set that he got from some cool show.
Yeah.
And then I'd recently shot a short of my own using a piece of set that must have cost $50,000 on the Star Trek III JJ's,
Yeah.
which was then used in his
Cloverfield Paradox.
Cloverfield
Yeah.
Paradox.
Yeah.
And now I have it in my short,
Yes.
which is really cool. It's got monitors on it and everything because I helped put it together. So that's really fun too.
Yeah. In that regard, the way I learned about that with Rod and the Twilight Zone was when I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion. And so if you have ever seen a movie called Forbidden Planet, Rod used pretty much everything from that movie: the car, the costumes, the sets, Robbie the robot, all that stuff. And he used stuff from Meet Me in St. Louis. So when I was a producer on Sliders at Universal, I said, "Do we have access to everything that Universal has ever made?" And they said, "Well, we don't know. No one's ever asked that question." And they came back shortly thereafter and said, yes, with very few exceptions, yes. So we were using stuff from Jurassic Park and 12 Monkeys and Time Cop and on and on and on. And it gave us enormous production value. And so that's what I do now with Space Command. Anytime a big budget science fiction show or a movie ends, I acquire the props and costumes and sets that I can afford. And it helps enormously. And in fact, there's a scene here which I can show. Let's see, how are we doing for time? We're good.
I have one more anecdote.
Oh, please, yes.
So when I was at New World Pictures with Roger Corman, he would do something that was even more extreme than Rod Serling. He would take his own films and recycle them. Like when I did, the film I did with Jim was Galaxies, what was that called?
Galaxy of Terror.
Galaxy of Terror.
Yeah.
It was changed its name a couple of different times. And that was a ripoff of Alien. So we built Alien ripoff sets, and then we recycled that into two other films. One that was shot, the 10-minute shot over a weekend as a kind of a test. And there were these rear screen projection shots where you just literally had a slide projector that said alarm and went like this with it, right? And a little projector, 35 millimeter projector that ran loops from prints of Roger's last movie, which was done by James Cameron. So I would run these loops in this projector. The projector broke on the set, so I had a projectionist background, so I fixed the projector, and they put me on the set, and I got my first screen credit, and that's how it worked with Roger. Well, that's how it works with Mark, too. So it was really interesting to take these other films of his and make them into his next 2 or 3 movies.
Yes, well,
So-
I'll show this scene now. It's called The Hall of Heroes. The episode we're doing now is, we're shooting hours 7 and 8 of the 12-hour season now. It's an episode called The Great Solar War, 2 hours in length. All of our episodes are 2 hours in length, so it's 6 2-hour stories that can be shown as 1-hour episodes as well. So that's how the first 2 hours of Space Command is now on Amazon Prime and all those other platforms, because we don't have to wait till we have the first season done before we can actually start distributing. So, but I've been acquiring spacesuits from different TV shows and movies over the last few years because I knew
How
I
many
was...
do you think
30,
different shows?
Maybe 30.
30 different shows.
Yeah,
And sets from at least 15 major movie sources.
Yeah, and more with more coming. For instance, if you go to our booth, which is 1238, we have one of the spacesuits from The Martian, the Ridley Scott film there now. Just came in the mail. And but let me show you. I don't know if there it's up. Yeah. So let me show you this scene. Sage is in it, and I'll set up the story. Jack Kemmer, Ethan McDowell. When we first meet him in the first 2-hour episode, Redemption, it's 60 years from now. This is hours 5 and 6, which are now 23 years later. So he has a grown son who's a weapons officer in Space Command. They get involved in a big ambush, and his son is traumatized. And so they're back at Space Command headquarters, and his son is wondering what he has to offer anymore, who he is. He's questioning himself. So this is father and son. Now, let me tell you how I cast. As you know, with Ethan, I had the worldwide talent search. Then I was having lunch with my friend Michael Harney, who was on Deadwood and Orange is the New Black. He was one of the leads on that show, and Project Blue Book. And I said, you know, you look sort of like Ethan McDowell. Would you want to play his dad? And he said, oh, sure, yeah. So we cast him as the dad. Then a couple of years later, Elaine and I were having lunch, my wife and I, and now how many of you are from out of town? Hands? Yeah, okay. So this is something you don't know. In LA, all the waiters and waitresses are actors and or writers, okay? So you can literally so you can literally say to any waiter or waitress, how's the script coming, or how are the auditions going, and they will provide you with an answer. So there was one of the waiters, David Snyder, who looked like he could play Ethan's son. And I said, are you an actor? And he said, well, yes, I am. So I cast him as Ethan's son. So here's Ethan McDowell and David Snyder as father and son, and this is in the Hall of Heroes at Space Command headquarters, and you will probably recognize a number of these spacesuits and Sage as well. So Here we go. And this is the rough cut, so it doesn't have final sound or effects or any of that stuff.
My name is Captain Daniel O'Bannon. On planet LV-426, I neutralized an infestation of off-world life forms and saved a colonist child. And
Hey, Dad.
Hey. A lot of brave men and women.
Have you ever made a bad call? You know, one with disastrous consequences? Yeah, I didn't think so.
No, the answer is yes. Just following orders until way too far in the game cost the lives of countless synthetics.
Synthetics?
Who have as much right to live as we do. All they wanted was just to be free.
How do you live with it?
Making unforgivable choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just by deciding that our fellow beings are more important than self-destruction. I needed to make it better.
You're right. I'm not like them. Or you. Look, I'm a home front. I'm a talker. I can sway people, so what? It doesn't...
No, it's not that easy.
It's just words.
No. Mahatma Gandhi. Martin Luther King. Our very own Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Grandmother.
Yeah. The ability to sway people, to change their hearts. Oh, that has more power than any man with a gun. You got a gift, kid.
I have an idea.
Yay, thanks. And yeah.
The other show is The Outer Limits. I finally remembered.
Well, there you go. There you go. I knew if I vamped long enough. Now we go to Adam. Do you want to talk about your role in this whole thing and how you came into it?
Yeah, I came into it in 2017 when I first joined the table.
Yeah.
I heard about this crazy idea for a show with a hopeful vision of the future. And I had just come off of seeing Tomorrowland, the movie, which has a hopeful vision of the future. It's like, people can come together. Even though bad things happen, people can come together and make a better future. And so I was like, we need a story like this. We need shows like this out there. And not super pessimistic, a post-apocalyptic sci-fi, which is fun, but we need more than. So I had money at the time, and I decided, I was trying to make it as an actor. I had squirreled away some money to if I don't make it after 2 years, I'm going to use this money to move back home. And at that point, I had already booked a national commercial. I was doing voiceovers for anime pilots. And so I was like, I ain't going home. So as a symbolic gesture, I used that money and invested in Space Command.
Yeah.
And I have not regretted it since.
That's great. Well, thank you, Ed.
And then eventually I wanted to, protect my investment. And so I started working for Space Command. And I was like, what can I do to help?
That's great.
I started working for this guy, one of my better bosses, in Kickstarter fulfillment. So if you are a Kickstarter backer, I probably had a hand in getting you your perks. And if you haven't gotten your perks, it's this guy's fault.
No, let us know. Yeah, exactly.
How many perks do we? Oh man, electronic. Yeah, 4,500 different perks, and I organized them all in one spreadsheet. And
over 1,500 actually physically mailed.
8,000 backers. Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Over 10 different Kickstarter. Well, to date, we've done like 10 different Kickstarters. And so, so I did all that. I helped with the website. And then eventually Mark was like, hey, do you want to be in Space Command? I was like, yes, I've been waiting. I'm not in Redemption, but I am in Forgiveness.
Which is the new one.
I'm not on the poster, but,
but next time.
Later.
Yeah, you bet.
And now in Great Solar War, I'm going to be in, I have an actual title. A name.
Yes.
Lieutenant Dozois, I think it's called.
Dozois? Gardner Dozois, yeah. All the Space Command characters are named after classic science fiction writers. So it's Simak and Bradbury and Sturgeon and so forth.
Yeah.
And Gardner Dozois was a very famous writer and editor in the last few decades. Yeah, exactly.
But on set, and one of my favorite phrases is, any day on set is a good day. I've done so many different things, from gopher to transport. I've given Ferran Tahir a ride. I've given the other guy, Thorsten, I've given him a ride. So many people.
And for those who don't know who Ferran Tahir is, if you saw JJ's Star Trek movie, at the very beginning, he's the Federation captain who gets skewered by the Romulan. That's Ferran Tahir. He's a bald-headed guy, and he's wonderful in Space Command. Also, we've been working with James Hong, who from Blade Runner and Big Trouble in Little China and Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. So, I mean, one of the great things about this is the total joy of working with your heroes. I mean, it's just, there's nothing like it.
Yep.
So, I think David shot a video where you're saying, I just do eyes, which is, Blade Runner line.
I gave James Hong an impression of James Hong in Blade Runner. And he listened, he looked at me and he says, you have terrible eyes.
That's great, yeah.
But, one of my favorite ones was there was a scene in Forgiveness where I got to do a voiceover bit with the, now boarding.
It's really
Flight
fun.
to Altair 4.
Yeah, and just to let you know, everything is toward building our empire in terms of shows that are meaningful, that are entertaining, that aren't stupid, that don't that have characters who actually you care about, and that pay off well. So when we finish the 12 Hours of Space Command, actually before that, we're creating a repertory company of actors. Bob Picardo, Barbara Bain, Armin Shimmerman, on and on and on and on, and they'll be appearing in multiple of our series and our projects. I was just talking. I've been reaching out to Jerry O'Connell about starring in one of the series we're going to be doing. I worked with him on Sliders, and again, these are actors who are wonderful, and I want to give them roles that are meaningful, not just like where they have some little bit of shtick or something and they're a guest star, and what a waste of incredible talent. So
Yeah, those roles go to us.
yeah, and no, but it's super fun. And by the way, you guys are all welcome to join our roundtable. You're welcome to come visit our studio anytime you'd like. I have my cards here. Just email me, and you can see our 3 sound stages full of those
And we
spaces,
have
among other
keys.
things. And in terms of investment, as I said, you can invest in Space Command or the Showrunners Network, which is the slate of 1 feature and 5 series. If you buy 15 shares of that, you get an executive producer credit on all 5 series and the movie, and that's a career in a box. That's where, most people who invest in film and TV, it's things that never get finished or never get seen. This is where you can say, I'm an executive producer on a series with the guy who created The Expanse, or the guy who created Farscape, or the guy who created Defiance, or Alien Nation, or Sequest, or the executive producer of Evil. That's all one guy, by the way. That's Rockne O'Bannon. It's amazing. And of course, you're all welcome when we're shooting if you want to come be on set, and we'll put you in a spacesuit or whatever and turn a camera on you. But but one thing that I'll follow up on something David said was, this is made by hand. This is as much craftsman work as like some guy who carves a table. There's no, I was going to say no bullshit. It's just we get together, we bring our talents and our commitment. I was talking to Casper Van Dien from Starship Troopers a few minutes ago because someone else I want to cast, and I was saying, it's like there's no, we work with people who are talented and who are great to work with. We do not hire anyone who's a jerk, because life's too short, and why do that? At one point, a DP was being recommended to us, and they said, he's really talented, but he's a screamer. And I thought, well, no, we're not going to hire that guy. Why? Because when we get together, it's really like a family reunion, and we are very proud of what we're making. And so, Steve, do you want to? Steve's one of our creature performers and fight choreographer and tons of stuff. So go for it.
I think I came in 2015, 2016 with the second film, Forgiveness. Originally came in as the stunt coordinator, fight choreographer, and then just kind of started filling in where I was needed. For this one, we needed the alien, and then Mark sends me a text with the picture of these stilts. He's like, do you know anybody that can use these? I'm like, well, no. He's like, do you think you could? I'm like, yeah, why not? So it's just been a lot of fun. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is figuring out how we're going to do things when we don't have that huge Hollywood budget, and making things happen that look good. I'm a big fan of practical effects. I know you can do a lot with CGI, but I think practical, just you feel it more when you see it. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing. As we were saying, working with a lot of the different set pieces and all of that. Growing up as a kid in the 70s, it was all sci-fi for me, sci-fi and fantasy. And just seeing some of these pieces after years and years and years, and just hearing some of the stories that they tell, it really has become like working with a family. I've done a lot of different things, playing the alien. I've got another role in one of the other films coming up where you can actually see who I am. But then I've filled in with helping out with set pieces, and then just helping out with other people's projects and helping them get things set up, and just it's been a ride.
Yeah, it's really fun. And are there any questions? Because we can. I think we've got just a few more minutes, but I want to make sure that. Vince, what do you?
Probably the most challenging aspect of bringing these different types of effects together, and that are any memorable scenes or effects, or that's been the most head wrapping.
Sure. I mean. Yeah. I would say the main challenge has been not having 5 of you. Okay. I mean, we have 4 more of you. I think we'd be in clover. The challenge with visual effects is always making sure they're of quality. There's a lot of people out there who just kind of do the minimum, and that's not what you want. There was once a producer that we were going to bring aboard one of our projects, my wife and I. And he said, well, you don't bring your A game to everything. It depends on what you're being paid. that was the end of his job, because no, I brought my A game to Next Gen and DS9 and Smurfs. I wrote It Came from Outer Smurfs, and It Came from Outer Smurf, which was the science fiction episode. But I brought my A game to everything I did. It's like you can't, because if you don't bring your A game, first of all, you're dishonoring yourself. But more than that, you're wasting the time of your audience, and that's dreadful. Because why are we here? Why do we love science fiction and fantasy and horror? Because people have brought their best, and the movies that we love, the TV shows that we love, it's not by accident that something is wonderful. Everyone has to do their job well. Everyone has to really bring their heart to it. And there's a guy that I heard about. I actually had lunch with him one time. He was a VFX artist, and he was working for this low-budget company, Charles Band, and he knew that he was doing visual effects for these little low-budget films, and he knew that he could get the job done and go home by 6, or he could keep working until 2 a.m. and make it perfect, right? And he said, no one's going to notice, but I'm going to know. So he did that, and like a year or two later, a director contacted him and said, I know that probably no one has been noticing what you've been doing, but I have been, and I want you to come aboard my film. And that was Peter Jackson. And when I had lunch with this guy, he just won 3 Oscars for the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. And so again, it's like, okay, there's a reason great stuff gets made and great people are part of it. Which story? The corridor? I don't know what you're talking about. There's a corridor that he's delusional about.
No, in Space Command for Redemption, there is a sequence that has probably 100 shots in it, and the entire thing was shot. Almost the entire thing was shot green screen. So we had to create an environment that they were in that was convincing, and every single shot had to be hand cut with green screen removal, and because of the way it was shot on the set, it had to be hand rotoscope, which means someone goes in and paints out the outline of people manually, of which Vince did quite a bit of. And in the end, after a lot of trial and error and color correction and tests and different visual effects people coming on board, and just really Mark and Elaine not giving up on the quality of it, and me too, because they inspired me, that this thing actually plays pretty well, and it's like, it's a fight between 5 or 6 different people, and
well,
some
Jacob's
are aliens,
one of them,
and
right? Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, Jacob, is that the synthetic?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
the
Jacob's
synthetic.
one of them. Yeah.
He's a synthetic. He gets killed.
Great.
So that was a very, very challenging, and it turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
So there's an example.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, the one thing we have is an open time frame, at the moment. And but what? Oh, we still have Howard. Yes, Howard. Why don't you talk about your childhood?
Magnificence.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Howard Benjamin, a producer on Space Command, as well as the sound guy. As you can tell, I'm still doing sound. My background is that I was an on-air disc jockey here in Los Angeles. Did that for a number of years, then went into voiceover, and met Mark and Elaine in 2010, I believe.
Wow.
And they were working on a comedy series at the time of comedy shorts, and they needed a sound guy to hold boom. And at that time, because I am a film critic and a television critic, started the Critics' Choice Association and the Television Critics Association, I had a lot of sound gear. Not as much as I have now. Kind of gone
What
on
are you
a
up to,
buying spree.
Are you up to like 200,000 now?
Well, it's close to about 150,000,
Okay.
maybe close to 200,000. So they said, we've been using this sound guy for years and years and years. Poor Ralph. That was the last of Ralph, and I took over from him, and we've never looked back. I've been sound guy on all of their projects, and in the second, the third and fourth edition of Space Command, I have a small role, a pivotal role, however, called Elder Howard. I'm thinking they thought that all night long to come up with that name. And I got to work with James Hong, which this was James Hong's 500th film.
Wow.
Talk about a career. But you've heard my voice on the radio. You've heard me in commercials over the years. I've got a ton of voiceovers in Space Command.
Announcing West Coast for Regis and Kelly, Regis and Kathy Lee.
Yeah, was a West Coast announcer. Just tons of different things. Mickey Mouse, the toys. I was the voice of that for a while, from '93 to '98. And again, you've heard this thing of family. These are my closest friends. These are people that I know I can rely on, that I know will be there day in and day out and doing the best job they can possibly do. The reason I bought all this equipment is because I want what I do to be up on a par with everything that else is going on that set. So, you know, onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
I'll do it until, you know, they bring in the oxygen tank.
And after. Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Yeah.
Bring them in, wheel them in.
But it's super fun. And, you know, I'll tell you one other story. One of the actors we're working with is Bill Mumy. Many of you probably know him from Babylon 5 or from Lost in Space. He was the original Will Robinson. And he's in Space Command. He's in the episode we're shooting now, and where he plays this genius kind of trillionaire guy who invented the synthetics. And in the first 2 hours of Space Command, he's terminally ill. But in the current episode, we thaw him out. He's cryogenically frozen, but we need his help, and we thaw him out. And so I bought the cryopod or the rejuvenation chamber from Luke Cage, and we're going to be using that to, you know, pop him open. But
weighs a ton.
it does. It's a monster. But the way I met Bill Mumy was when I was 7. I was being raised by a divorced mom, and I was a big fan of Lost in Space. This is before Star Trek. I was 7 years old, in my pajamas, with a cold, at home, and I decided to call the stars of Lost in Space. So I pulled out they used to have a big phone directory with all the phone numbers in it. So I started calling the people with the same names as the actors on Lost in Space. And they weren't the same people, of course. But there was only one Mumy in the phone book, and it must have been his dad. And so I called it, and his mom answered, and I said, "Is Billy there?" And she said, "Hold on." And Billy Mumy came on the phone, and I was so nervous, all I could do was say, "Will you be my friend?" and hang up. But when my mom came home from work, I told her this story, of course, and so we called him back, and when I was over my cold, we went to his house, and we traded comic books, and I had he gave me a signed photo of himself as Will Robinson, and then later when I wrote The Twilight Zone Companion, I interviewed him about the episodes he'd done, and then we worked together on Babylon 5, and so I've cast him in Space Command. But it's so fun to be taking this creative journey with this guy that I met when I was 7, when he was on the TV. And the new show I'm creating with Rockneil Bannon, who did Farscape and all those other shows, it's called Sweet Haven, and it has all these wonderful actors that we've all grown up with. The basic idea is that, you bet, 5 minutes, thanks. And the basic idea of Sweet Haven is that there's a bioengineered disease that gets out of hand, and it kills everyone in the world under 60. And so the people 60 and above have to figure out how to save humanity when they can't reproduce. And so it's got Robert Picardo, Barbara Bain, Veronica Cartwright from Alien, just on and on and on. Someone is friends with Barbara Eden, so I'm going to offer her a role. I mean, just these wonderful actors who are underutilized. Tim Russ is in it.
Mike Harney.
Mike Harney, yes, of course. And I've been talking to George Takei and James Hong about being in it as well. And I would have them play brothers, squabbling brothers, because I don't think they've ever acted together. And Francois Chow, who is the villain in The Expanse, he's in it as well. So again, there's many, many joys ahead. Any final questions? We've got about 3 more minutes. Yeah.
Hi. I wouldn't ask my question, but you're so open and cool. So
yeah.
Let I say first.
Yeah, well, we're happy to tase you, but go ahead, please.
Quick connotation of myself.
Yes.
Sebastian Sisak. I am an actor in Russia.
Oh, good. I've heard of Russia. Yeah.
I moved in Russia 2 months ago as a permanent resident.
Okay.
The Wall State are more known as a main superhero character in the first issue of Russian superhero movie.
Oh, great. Yes.
You really know the guy.
Terrific.
Yes. So you're so full open and you inspired me to really like yourself.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
My first word I need what to is would you?
Sure.
My question.
Yes.
When do you start?
Well, well, here's a couple things. Yeah, follow up. Here's my card. I'll get. Yeah, you can all have my card and come and be part of my world. And the one of the things I did when I wrote for Mira Furlan in Babylon 5, I knew I would want to work with her again. And so when I created Space Command, I took Mira out to lunch, and I said, I don't know much about your character yet, but I can tell you this. She's a xenoarchaeologist. She has a grown daughter that she has a sort of a love-hate relationship with, but she's not defined by a man. And she said, I'm in. Okay, so, but I knew, I had met a young actress named Jelena Mrja, and she was also from the former Yugoslavia. So I had them, when they're in scenes together, they're speaking Serbo-Croatian, and then they speak English to everyone else. So we have many different languages in Space Command, Spanish, Italian, so Russian would fit right in. We're actually working with a Russian producer right now, Irina, and on Elaine's film, and so yeah, so you'll have someone you can have a conversation with. So absolutely, we follow up with us and
Talk to me.
Yeah, talk to him, and yeah, absolutely, and the whole thing is inclusive. Any other questions? This is if you've dreamed of being in film and TV, you don't have to work with us. You don't have to invest with us or any of that stuff, but don't let go of your dream. You know, the ones who make it are the ones who just don't stop. And build teams. You know, when you meet someone, for instance, there's a kid down in the dealer's room. He's 11 years old, and he's a phenomenal comic book artist, really phenomenal. And his parents have bought him this booth, and so I'm hiring him. He's going to do a page in the Space Command comic book, you know, and 11-year-old kid. And again, it's
now
like
available for sale.
Yeah, but the thing is. Yeah, he's great. He's great. But the point is, when you meet, if you want to be an actor or a director or a writer or a producer, as you meet people who are talented, build teams. And make sure they're people who do what they say they're going to do, finish what they start, who are honorable people. And what you can find out is that there are honorable people, as Sage said, there are honorable, good people all up and down the food chain. When I was at ComicCon years ago, I met this guy. He was at a booth, and he had just made a movie, and they were promoting it there. And he had read The Twilight Zone Companion, and he was a fan of my work, and I was certainly a fan of his. And a couple of years later, we ran into each other a couple times at Comic-Con, and then a couple of years later, he was looking for someone to write a book with him. So he reached out to me, and we ended up writing that book together, and that was Guillermo del Toro. So, but Guillermo and I really hit it off because we both are fueled by creative passion. You know, Guillermo, more than anyone, is a self-made man. I mean, if you had asked 100 people, when he was a kid in Guadalajara, if you had asked 100 people what chance he had of becoming a world-renowned director, 100 people would have said no chance, because he was there in Mexico, you know, right? And he proved them wrong, because it wasn't a majority decision. His life was not a majority decision. His one vote outweighed everyone else in the world. He just had to stand by it. So any final things, guys? Or we're happy to talk with you afterwards. You definitely come around our booth, 1238, and you can check out Space Command. There's a QR code on the back of these cards where you can watch the first 2 hours for free. And it's been really lovely having this time with you. So thanks very much, guys.